everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, thank you for joining, and if you've been here for a while, then thank you so much for coming back. It's really nice to be sitting down and going to film a tarot video because, well, it feels like a while. It's actually been, I guess, since the start of January since I've filmed a tarot video, and it's just really nice to get back into it. There have been so many really great tags recently. I've wanted to take part in so many of them. I was stumped for a bit because I wanted to do One Deck Gone Wild, and I just kept feeling like this was the deck that I needed to use for that, because even though I have a really strong connection with the pagan other worlds, which I spoke about in a VR to Simon last year, all about tarot and how I felt that was like a soul deck, and I do definitely feel like that. But I still feel like this is the easiest deck for me to read, and it is like the most, I don't know, connected that I feel to a deck. Even though I still prefer the art in the Pagan Otherworlds, and I still love the way it feels to read with that deck. Then Mary Grace Ferrin did another tag, which is 13 real tarot questions, and it's hashtag 13 tarot questions. And I knew that that needed to be the very first tarot video that I started with, because it really spoke to me, the prompts, and it's basically exactly the kind of video that I've been wanting to watch and make for a really long time as well. So I'm so glad that Grace did this. And I thought, because I haven't worked with this deck in many months, over a year actually, and I miss it and I love it. And you know, I never ever thought, I thought the Druidcraft was my deck. Then it turned out that the Wildwood Tarot I use so much more, and so I have put these the right way up, you'll be pleased to hear, but they are not in order. So I'm going to go through and show you the Wildwood while I answer the prompts to Mary Grace's fantastic new tag. If you are interested, this is the box. This is quite an old copy now, so they may have changed it. However, this, if you aren't aware, this deck is based on the Greenwood Tarot, which had different illustrations, and they are, Mark Ryan and John Matthews, I believe, are working on a re-release of that deck, and it's been highly anticipated, and I'm definitely anticipating it. But this is the beautiful art of Will Worthington, and it is stunning. So I'm gonna just flip through this and talk through the prompts, and then this is here just to be like a kind of nod towards this thing that I need to sort of satisfy or placate or whatever it is, this like pull towards the Smith Waite deck. I'm not sure what it is, but there we go. So I am going to get on with the questions. So the first question is, what is tarot to you? And I remember there was a tag that came out recently, what is tarot? So I'll pop that hashtag in the description box as well. And I guess I haven't even really come to a decision about this. I've listened to a lot of other people say what they think. The thing that came to mind, and I don't know if anyone else has said this, they may have done. And if they have, I can't remember if they have, and if someone did actually say it, who it was. So if someone has already said it, just let me know. But what I always think of is like a telescope, and that is if I'm really pondering on it, you know, really carefully and thinking about it, because I feel like it is a method for divining the future, obviously. It is also a method for me of looking inside of myself, my soul, my psyche. It's kind of a deep dive going inwards. So it's like it's a portal to me. It's like a vehicle through which I travel to a place where I can glean insights. It is a journey towards insights as well as a portal, as well as a vehicle. It is many things to me. It is also a beautiful collection of art that I want to keep and work with. Each deck I feel is like a different land that I want to inhabit. I mean, this demonstrates that really well, this deck, because you can really see yourself almost stepping through. And I'm sure I've done pathworking exercises with this deck in the past in that way. There are a lot of animals in this deck as well, and I'm not a huge animal deck person, which I think is really interesting. I mean, I have some, and I love animals, of course, but I quite like to relate to people in tarot decks. I feel like it's almost easier to see myself in a person, but I still have a great connection and bond with this deck, so despite there being quite a lot of animals as well. So yeah, going back to the question because I digressed. I believe that tarot is a method of viewing potential futures. Should things continue along the way that they are going, or should I continue to behave the way I am? Oh, I just love this deck. I've been working a lot with Wolf Spirit recently, and this is just, yeah, I've been having some journeyings on the astral of late where I am shapeshifting into a wolf, and I've never shapeshifted into a wolf before. I found myself a mouse and a cat at various points, but shapeshifting into a wolf has been different. Very powerful and feral feeling, but beautiful and powerful. And I actually had a sort of grey-white wolf visit me in a very vivid lucid dream last year, and that was a spirit guide for me, I know. So that's really powerful. The wolf spirit is really powerful for me at the moment. I hope that that's been clear. I do think tarot is a lot of things. Heather did a video just the other day about this whole question of predictive versus psychological. I see them much as Heather said. I believe this is the general viewpoint that they can be both, and they always have been both for me, and I can't divorce that. It's only if I'm doing like a real inner spread where I'm not asking for an outcome, where I feel like the predictability, whatever, of the reading is not really relevant. But I do see it like that, which is one of the reasons why I'm so interested in playing card divination and Lenormand and learning more about that. So my studies this year have been continuing with those. So yeah, absolutely predictive, absolutely psychological tool, and I work with it in a number of different ways in my practice, and I do like to empower others when I read for them as well. So yeah, there's just a lot, but I do see it as a method of viewing, like a viewfinder, a telescope, as well as a vehicle, a portal of transportation, etc. Do you read for yourself, for others? Yes, I read for myself, of course, and I have for a long time, although I think I've said this before. When I first learned, I was 17 and I was quite scared to read for myself, so for quite a while I just looked at the cards and I would work on the meanings and not actually do real tarot readings. I would just learn the meanings and kind of memorize them, which I would not advocate people do. I would advocate learning tarot via reading for yourself, absolutely, which is, I believe, how most people do learn these days. But back then I was just completely paralyzed by my own inertia. I didn't do that then, but eventually I did pick up the cards and read for myself, and I've never looked back. And I did have some time away from reading at a certain point, and that was due to kind of Christian trauma and things. So I do read for others as well. I would like to be offering readings, but the fact that I don't have a website is kind of holding me back at the moment, and I want to create my website, and I keep not creating a website, I guess because it's time and being really pushed, having a job, having a family with 2 small kids, and just a home to maintain, a husband, a family to look after, and life is really, really busy. So just keeping a spiritual practice is really, really challenging, let alone like uploading content for YouTube and Instagram. To create witchy and tarot content, it's quite time consuming. So yeah, there's not a lot of time left for other things. And then there's a Patreon as well that I do create new and full moon readings for. Those are very lengthy now, and they include quite a lot of shadow work and journal prompts and all of the aspects, how to work with them, rituals and practices to engage with, herbs and crystals to work with, as well as a tarot spread for the moment as well. So there's a lot that goes into that. I put a lot of work into it, and that does take me several days to do that. So going off topic, but I would love to read for others professionally, but I haven't set myself up yet, although I will be soon. That is the plan. And yes, I do read for others in my life, say friends and family, etc. With what frequency do you read tarot for yourself? I spoke about this in my January video, my top decks from last year, basically, that I didn't read as much last year. I had like a few dips in my practice because I was, again, sort of like a little bit paralyzed by situations that I was in, and not wanting to hear certain things from the cards, but also not wanting to hear the same things from the cards, or only wanting to ask certain questions and needing to just get away from that. So that is why I sort of stepped away from the cards, and this is sort of part of my thinking that I actually do need to be reading more for others. I do think I need to be reading so much more for others in order to kind of keep reading and keep enjoying the tarot, not having to read for myself all the time and not feeling that pressure, because sometimes it can feel like such a lot. And also, Bronia has said this years ago, I think she said this, and I have echoed this statement before, but this idea that I find that sometimes it's challenging to actually take on board the lesson that you learn through the tarot, whatever tarot spread that you're doing. You actually have to kind of concretize it in some way and manifest it, make it real, and somehow learn to practice in a way, or to behave in a way, act in a way, or learn your lessons from the tarot. So that's something I've been working on in the last few years as well. And I feel like exercises like tapping, which Bronia also does actually, is really, really helpful for things like that, because once you've identified like a thought pattern or toxic behavior, a limiting belief, etc., you can then tap on it and start to sort of change your cognition behind it, to change those neural pathways and start to shift them, and start to really work with some cognitive behavioral strategies, which I do at the moment. I'm working on a number of those and some shadow work with my therapist, and it's been so incredible. I do read for myself, but less frequently now. A couple of years ago it was every day, and then maybe every few days, and now it's sort of once or twice a week, or maybe 3 times. But at a point I was maybe not picking up the cards at all for a few weeks, so yeah, that was hard. I mean, they were always out, and I kind of softened that for myself by working with some oracle and pulling some oracle cards and looking at general energies, and that really, really helped, sort of taking it back to basics, looking at the energy for the day and not worrying about other things that were going on or worrying me. What types of readings do you do? So again, as I said, I do like to do predictive readings, but they usually have specific questions or a specific question. And what I like to do is, what I think that others have touched upon as well, is this kind of intuitive pulling of cards and asking the questions. I do tend to allow the cards to fall out, but if I feel that I have to stop, I do stop. I allow my intuition to guide me, like if I need to pull a card from the top or the bottom. And then what I usually do is I do maybe 3 cards on top, 3, and then another 3, and usually like a 9-card spread. That way, if it's a quick one, then maybe 3 cards or maybe 4 cards if more cards than 3 come out. So it is very fluid, it's very flexible, and it depends on the question. Sometimes each card will be a question of its own. Sometimes the 3 cards will be answering the one question. Other times it will be like 2 cards answer one question, 3 cards answer another question. So it's very, very fluid in that way. And I ask the questions as I'm going, and I really, really just follow my gut instinct with it, my heart, my intuition. Yep. Follow that and just go with that. And that's how I've worked always with my decks, really. So, and then I obviously do create set spreads, such as my full and new moon spreads that I do. They're usually 7 or 8 prompts, and I like to use those prompts for shadow work as well. They're really, really helpful. And I do occasionally do the odd spread that I find online if I've got something specific that I want to do, or if someone I know creates a spread that looks good, I generally have a go at that. I tend to ask questions like the energy of something, an obstacle, and something to support. Those kinds of lines, I really enjoy those kinds of spreads. So it is the next day, and I have realised that I completely forgot to say something quite specific in my video when I filmed yesterday, and so I thought I'd just impromptu film something on my iPhone. Essentially, when I was talking about the way that I read, I talked about intuitively kind of asking questions, and sometimes I will pull cards for one question, sometimes I'll allow them to fall out, and other times I will have a specific spread, but more often than not I'll do 3 cards and then potentially 6 cards, potentially 9 cards. Sometimes that is a row of 4, depending on how I feel. I just lean into it really, but it's mostly 3. And I do tend to, when I'm doing a larger spread, extend to the 9 cards, and that really I feel gives me like a full picture. But another thing that I didn't speak about is how I then read those cards, because I do like to read them in a linear kind of way, but not so prescriptive as that, but just as if it was a story playing out. But I do allow myself to look at the cards in a reverse order or in a kind of odd order. So I look at the cards depending on what they are. Sometimes I feel that the first card that comes out, for instance, isn't necessarily the first thing that is playing out. Sometimes the first card that comes out, I think, maybe is more of what's going on inside. And the reason why I know is because maybe sometimes I already know something about the situation, and I want to know where it's going. So, and I might notice something that I think, yes, I understand exactly what that is, but it might not be the first card, it might be the second or the third card. And that's why I know that being so prescriptive with the linear order of things isn't so helpful. And I like to think of it as like storytelling, almost like, you know, when you read really good novels, or novels that really just enthrall you and pull you in, and those novels often aren't told in a linear way. They are told as a story, of course. They're a story playing out, but it hops around a lot. And I think films and TV do this as well. Like, it hops around the story, but it's storytelling. And I think of when I say I'm reading them in a linear way, I mean I'm reading it as if it was a story, but not necessarily literally linear, as in first card, second card, third card. So I just wanted to say that as well, because I didn't really explain that, and that was something that I did think I was going to go into, but yesterday I think my brain was a little bit foggy and fuzzy, so there might have been a few things that I completely forgot to mention. So if anyone has any questions, do let me know. But yeah, I just thought it would be cool to mention that, because I do think that goes into the way I read quite specifically, in terms of this kind of intuitive pulling of cards, and the way that I lay them out, and the way that I allow them to tell the story and allow the story to unfold. And that's really another thing that I didn't add, that I do see the tarot as a storyteller, as well as an oracle, as well as, you know, a telescope, as I said, as well as an oracular means of travel, and yeah, like a communication device, I suppose. Yeah, almost like a telephone as well. That's really interesting, the words telly that I used there. But anyway, I'm going to go back to the main part of the video now. So apologies for the short intermission with the Rider-Waite-Smith. In terms of offering readings, I would definitely offer a number of different types of readings. But again, I think, like other people have echoed, I wouldn't be offering readings around things that go against my ethics as a reader. I wouldn't be offering readings that go against the ethics that I have. So spying on people, the reading would be about them and their feelings, and, you know, what they can do about a situation, how they can empower themselves in the situation they're in, I think is really important. Regarding what types of things do you typically consult the tarot, I usually ask the tarot about personal home life, my family, my husband and I, and my workload. My mental health actually is a big thing. I think self-care is a big thing that I talk to the tarot about. Shadow work as well, that's a massive part of it, and it's not always with a spread. And something very specific really in shadow work is what it would be. And I've read about other things as well, you know, family, etc. So there's a lot of things that I would read about, and there aren't that many questions I probably wouldn't ask the tarot for myself. But yeah, I have different things that I would read for others. How would you classify yourself as a reader? Book meanings: experiential, figurative, literal. I'd say definitely experiential. Obviously, I know the book meanings. I have some books, I've read some books, and I really enjoyed some books. But yeah, experiential, because, as I said, it's very intuitive work, and I always will be following a feeling, and I do receive messages as well, downloads. Not always, but especially sometimes when I'm reading for other people, I'll receive like a knowing, clear knowing. I do sometimes receive pictures, clairvoyance. So I think I am going to look at another deck. I really hope there was not too much glare with that, because there is a bit. This is Tarot of the Moon Garden. I haven't read with this in a very long time either. And I would say it's probably one of the decks in my collection that I've read the least with, really. But it was a deck that I felt I needed to get because of a dream I had had. So what types of questions do I ask the tarot? I think I've answered that one. So I basically would ask the tarot anything for myself, pretty much, and I probably wouldn't ask when I'm gonna pop my clogs. I haven't yet, and I don't really want to. What questions do you never ask the tarot? Yeah, probably I would never ask it how I'm going to pass away, or how someone I love is going to pass away. I might ask about their health though, if health is an issue. But yeah. Who do you think you're engaging with or speaking with when you read the tarot? I do believe I'm speaking with spirit, as well as a higher awareness of self. And the deck. I feel like because I'm an animist, I do feel like the deck has a spirit, and I think if I went to a different deck, it would give me a different answer. I mean, that is most likely true when you think about probability, but also just they have different personalities, and you get that. You do get that when you read with a deck. Their energy comes through, and it is different. And you know, so many people talk about this feeling they get from their deck, and they talk about their deck as if it's a person, their personality. You know, they personify their deck, and I completely agree with that. Like, that's how I feel. So the deck, my higher self, and you know, speaking to me as well as spirit. So a number of energies combined there, I believe. What other knowledge, experience do you apply to tarot readings? So astrology, numerology, religion, mythology, psychology. I would say I'm not really adept in any of those areas other than probably astrology. I can understand astrology a lot more than I could a couple of years ago. I did a lot of study on my own, and then when I started to go really, really deep into it, I was tracking the moons, and then I started taking a course, and things started to fall into place a little bit more for me. But I'm not at a place where I want to offer readings yet. I believe I'm a witch who knows how to work with astrology, and especially I like to focus on the moon phases, and I've worked with the new and full moon for several years now in this way, and looking at whatever zodiac sign the moons are in, and etc., and the planets and the zodiac signs, etc., I feel very confident with, and the houses and such. So that's probably the area that I would pull the most from. Mythology I know some, psychology I know a little bit. You know, I was interested, I read some Carl Jung at university. And numerology, I know some basics, but I've never read a book on it or anything, but I know basics about numerology, and so yeah, I would definitely bring that in. And religion, what I know of it really is just what I've studied at school, and then knowing what I know about my own path. Tarot is the book of life. Where else in your world do you witness tarot? So movies definitely are the first thing that spring to mind, because they're always in movies, they're always in film and TV. Tarot, I feel like, crops up in people's lives all the time, and you see things happening to them or hear them speaking in ways, and you just feel an energy is present. And you know, sometimes those types of people are open to it, so you might even say, oh, this is a real tarot moment, or something like that, you know, something along those lines. But some people are just not open to it, so you probably wouldn't. I mean, I think I see it every day in my world, you know, even just today. Like, here's the sun, very, very basic, but today it's really hot for the first time. And so today was a Sunday. It was beautiful, and not literally a Sunday, but it was a day full of sun. And what I love as well is this one is a little blonde child on a unicorn. This reminds me of my daughter Rosalie, actually, when she was really little, because her hair was just like this, and it's Rosalie's birthday today. So that, you know, for instance, perfect synchronicity there. I also just want to add something else that I noticed after I'd filmed this video, and that was literally someone's photo on Facebook, and someone I don't really know anymore, but it was a photo of a man, and it was a post about his mother, and he was celebrating his mother's birthday. But the first picture that he posted was a picture of him and his mother and his partner, who was pregnant at the time as well. So he was in the middle, and his mother on one side and his partner on the other, and she was pregnant, and it just literally reminded me completely of the Lovers, of course, and that choice. And oh, this is something I was just literally just like looking at from an outsider's perspective, but I thought it was just really interesting how it just was a perfect image of the Lovers card. In addition to that, I also do dream in tarot a lot, so tarot decks will come up, as well as tarot cards and tarot symbolism in my dreams, which I think is really interesting and significant. The butterflies are gorgeous. And things like, as well, the pentacles, the cups, the swords, and the wands, I feel like they are in the world everywhere you go. You know, staffs, I guess, in this, tree branches, in this case, you know, always everywhere. I mean, maybe I'm interpreting this in a really basic way, because of course these things are everywhere, but Yeah, and I do see it as in like I do see the archetypes as well coming through, the hero's journey as well. That really comes through. And I think that, you know, there are books out there, aren't there, where you can use the tarot to support you in writing a novel and things like that. Like, there are lots of ways that you can use the tarot and the archetypes within it, so everywhere. Have you experienced where tarot has correctly predicted the future? How did you feel when it came to pass? Yes, a lot with myself. And often, like, really with mundane, silly things. I can't even think of anything right now, but very, very literal things coming to pass. And then, yes, with some other things as well, which, you know, you read them at the time, and you're like, no, that's not even possible. And then it actually turns out to be the case in the end. Or it turns out to be the closing kind of chapter and the closing kind of thing that you remember about a certain circumstance or situation, and it's usually right. I definitely trust it when I receive those messages, and if it's about, you know, my shadows, my psychology, then I feel like that you can almost affirm more easily, especially if you're doing your work, you know. So definitely in those cases, and I think you can see those quicker, I think. But if it's to do with an outside circumstance and more of a predictive element, that it might take time for you to see it. And yeah, then there's some things that you just don't see. But yeah, absolutely. There have been some pretty difficult things predicted by the tarot, but I don't really know what else to say other than sometimes it can be really sad and other times it can be affirming. And I mean, I trust the tarot. Like, I don't second guess myself all that much with tarot, and that's quite a lot to say because I am someone who does doubt themselves a lot. I've just done some shadow work with my therapist and discovered some things about myself requiring validation, you know, from others in order to feel okay, to feel safe, to feel like a good person. And that is something I'm moving away from very, very quickly now. That was a tough pill to swallow, realizing that. So, but I trust myself implicitly when I do a reading, and I trust the first interpretation as well. And I think maybe that's from, you know, working on it for a long, long time, having lots of practice. But I definitely think that, you know, I was very, very, very lacking in confidence at first. Obviously, like I said, when I first read, I was lacking in confidence. I was scared. But also, I was lacking in confidence for several years for reading for others as well. I was scared that I would be sort of like a rabbit in a headlight and be sort of like kind of trying to search for an answer. And, you know, actually, sometimes you do get a reading and you're like, well, how the hell does that make any sense to what I have asked? And I can't even think of a scenario, but, you know, you ask a question and it's about something quite specific and you get an answer that's just like really weird and off the wall, and you're like, how, and you leave the cards out for 1 or maybe 2 weeks, and then you're like, oh, okay, now I see. And you're just like, yeah, great. And then sometimes as well, I feel the tarot, I feel like I think most of my tarot decks do this, where it sort of gets almost cross with you sometimes. And probably the decks I use the most get like this with me the most, but like really sassy in a way that they're like, oh yeah, so you've got this problem, haven't you? Yeah, I know, it's a real pain. This is your problem, isn't it? It's a problem. And it's like, yeah, could you just give me an answer, please? But right then and there, it doesn't want to give you the answer. And then so this is my sort of counter argument to myself about reading over the same thing, because actually sometimes the answers do change. They change because, as Heather said in her recent video, it is about the choices that you make. Well, this is a belief that some people have. And yes, I am personally one of these people that does believe that the choices you make will inform your future. But I do still believe that you can predict. So I'm pretty much in agreement with what Heather said in her video. But I do sometimes feel like the tarot is like, yeah, you got a problem. Yeah, deal with it then, you know, and it's almost like they can't even give you anything else, but you ask on a different day and then you actually do get an answer, and mostly that turns out to be accurate as well. And that is the other thing that is interesting with this, because I think that there are multiple things that can be true and seemingly contradictory at the same time. There can be multiple truths and there are nuances to everything. So every reading that you do, there's always another way to look at it. There's always another answer. There's always another card. But so many readers do say to trust the cards, and so that's what I try to do so much. And I do find that this process of leaving the cards out for as long as it takes to see the answer can really, really be supportive, even if you don't know how to interpret that, because it's so obscure considering what you've asked. If you leave it out and then you look at it, and those can be really, really useful to note down as well, because you can learn a lot from that. I have all of these things written down in my notes, in my journals, but there are just loads of them now, and I do tend to be quite forgetful about the experiences and readings I've had. And the final question is, if you are a witch or a magical practitioner, how, if applicable, does tarot fit into your magical practice? So yes, I am, and yes, it fits quite a lot with my magical practice. I don't tend to do readings specifically on everything if I'm going to be casting for it, but sometimes it can be useful, especially if you are going to be making big changes, or if you've got something to air out with someone, you know, some kind of issues that you want to get some clarity on. I really feel like asking the tarot around those situations is really helpful. I also do like to use the tarot in spell work occasionally, and I have a video on that on my channel. It's quite long. I probably didn't need to include quite so much. So yes, I do use it. I use it a lot, and I guess that what I do read on definitely impacts my magical practice in terms of shadow work and my self-love and self-care practices, and any workings I do for that. And for the last year and a half or so, in fact, you know, many years, but really, really heavily the last few years, I've been doing a lot of that kind of work, inner work, and it really, really pays in that respect to be reading with the tarot as well. And it's also supporting, I guess, learning the Lenormand and playing card divination as well. It is a really, really great thing to have in your witchy practice. I think as well you can use other things with it, so charm casting, for instance, bone casting I started doing this year, or last year I should say, 2022. And also I do like to use a pendulum as well with my tarot decks. I use other forms of divination such as scrying, I do dream divination, lucid dreaming and things like that, and obviously astral travel as I've talked about. But so there's quite a lot of different ways that I divine. I also scry in the clouds, and I think there's something Abby the Witch said she scryed with her eyes, and that's something that I've done since I was a child, but I didn't realise what it was. So I do tend to do quite a bit of different forms of divination, and working with birds, specifically the crows around here, and tea leaf reading as well occasionally as well. That's really fun. So I've kind of reached the end of the tag, and I've kind of run out of energy as well because I'm really burnt out at the moment, but I've had so much fun answering these questions and taking part in this tag, and I definitely want to be doing more tags because it's so fun. If you want to see any tarot related or magic related videos from me, please let me know. I would love to have any recommendations or questions, or like anything you'd like to see on the channel. Also, if you've got anything you'd like to see on the Patreon, let me know as well, because I'm all ears for creating new kinds of content there. And if you have enjoyed the video, please do click the like button, share it with anyone you think would also like to see this, who loves tarot and would like to take part in this tag. All of the prompts are down below, and a link to Grace's channel. And let me know your thoughts as well on any of these questions. If you would like to just leave me a comment below. If anything resonates for you or doesn't, I'd love to hear it either way. Please do subscribe if you'd like. Click the thumbs up button, of course, if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't already, and click the notification bell. And also, if you would like to join me on Patreon, I create new and full moon forecasts with the aspects, how to work with them, shadow work, journal prompts, different practices and rituals that you can engage in during that time, and crystals and herbs to work with. And I go into quite a lot of depth in those forecasts, so I put a lot of heart and soul into that. So I hope that you will come over and join us on Patreon. There are 2 tiers now as well, so that's fun, and there's Discord server, etc. I have a dog outside the door waiting for me, so I better go. Thank you again so much for joining me. Leave me a little dog emoji if you like. I hope you stay well and safe and look after yourselves, and I will see you again soon. Take care. Many blessings.